and nurses, just thank you so much for everyone coming out here. We planned this very last minute. About a month ago, I saw that there was a march for Medicare for all in 30 cities across the country, and Boston was not one of them. So I said, can we march in Boston? And they said, you want to organize it? And I said, yes. So that is where we are here today. I appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you to our speakers, all of our organizers. Thank you so much. We have a chance right now to get Medicare for all, not only in the country literally, but right now in Massachusetts, we have a bill for Medicare for all. For good math, we have a majority of senators and reps that are in favor of it, and we just need to make sure it comes into our vote. So we're going to pass this out, and we have nothing for us, so we're going to make sure that it's very loud and clear. I am going to introduce now my good friend Sabs for the announcement ceremony. She can say hi and introduce some of our new speakers today. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. If you were just joining us, I want to welcome you to the March for Medicare for All in Boston. A couple of months ago, a young lady reached out to me. Her name is Laura Fielding. She's an activist in Washington State, and she was trying to get people health care for everybody in Washington State. The name of that group that she was a part of is called Whole Washington.
Yeah.
That movement in Washington State has now spread across this country. So today, there are people marching in over 50 cities across the United States to get health care for everyone in this country. It's been too long that we've seen people die because they can't pay their medical bills. It's been too long that we've watched insurance companies rip off patients over and over and time again. And it has been too damn long since every time he puts someone in office, they say they're going to fix the healthcare system in this country, and they can't seem to figure it out. Meanwhile, you look across the world, and so many other countries guarantee healthcare to everyone. Why can't we do it here?
Great.
Part of that has to do with the pharma companies. Part of that has to do with the health insurance companies. And part of that has to do with the fact that some of our politicians were bought and paid for a long time ago. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. He is a Boston public school teacher, and he is running for Boston City Council for District 4. Everyone, please give a huge welcome to Joel Richards.
Man, I am. Well, there you go. I teach technology K-5. So I teach the little ones, elementary school. I've also been a classroom teacher in every grade from K all the way up to 5, and I've taught middle school. So this has a different meaning to me. It's not just about my family. It's about the families that I serve and the families that I teach every day. I've had students come in crying, in pain, because, you know, Mass Health only covers basic dental care. So if you have a deep problem, deep cleaning, you need something else done to your roots, it doesn't happen. So we're putting ice and water on their mouth as they cry and try to learn. We own tanks in this city. We spend money on all types of military industrial complexes, but we can't afford health care for a little 7-year-old girl to learn in her school. Does that make sense? Everyone should feel ashamed of this, and we allow this to happen. That's why we're marching. right? To bring light to that. So people can no longer just hide from that shame. They have to face it and tell us why they will support Medicare for all. Am I right? I'm also a preacher part-time, so I say amen. So if I say amen, just yell. It's a little easier to say all right, right? Myself, I met my wife 8 years ago, and her mother immigrated to this country a year before I met her. She had a lot of pain. She comes from a country where there's not universal health care. Luckily, she moved to a state that has mass health. She went to the doctor, and she had stage 4 cancer. If it wasn't for mass health, if it wasn't for the hospitals downtown, she wouldn't be here anymore, right? She has raised 2 of my kids, right? She's there every day, cooking and cleaning and loving on my kids. She would not be there without health care. This needs to be a nationwide. This needs to be nationwide. What if you moved to the states? You wouldn't be here, amen? So, all I want to say to you is, we're on the right side of history. That Jericho passed by. I didn't mean to call him names, but he is. Who's going to pay for it, right? We pay for a lot of stuff. Our labor, it's our money. We have to realize it, right? I remember when they tried to force people back to work because the economy had to keep going. I was asked to put my life on the line. But our children were asked to put their lives on the line to get the economy back going. So if you want to ask us to put our lives on the line to get our economy down, get the economy going, then give us the health care that we demand.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. I want to remind everyone that this is not a partisan movement. We have people marching across this country that are Democrats, Republicans, independents, and people who would just say they're unaffiliated, all marching together because they want everyone to have health care in this country. This is not a left or right issue. And for years, we have seen politicians make this a left-right issue. It is not. Everyone deserves health care. And so without further ado, I want to bring our next speaker. He is the Massachusetts State Representative for the 26th Middlesex District. Everyone, please give a huge welcome to Mike Connolly.
All right, how's everyone doing this afternoon? Let's say it's a Sabby, let's say it's for Kyle and our
Yeah.
My name. Uh-oh, did I lose you already? Let it rip, Mike. You can do it. It works? Oh. You broke it, Mike. There we go. There we go. I'm sorry. My name is Mike Connolly. I have the honor of representing the communities of Cambridge and Somerville up here in this building. Is anyone from Cambridge or Somerville here? And I'm so honored and humbled to stand with you and march with you from Union Square to the Common in support of Medicare for all. You know, there's really no alternative to Medicare for all. This is a policy choice. It's a policy choice that's made in Washington, D.C. It's a policy choice that's made in this building. And it's a choice that puts profit over human lives. And that's just that form. Am I right? We marched here pretty quickly today. I think we got here a little ahead of schedule. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, about my own background, what led me into public service. I think it speaks to how we can elect more Medicare for all champions so that we can finally change the law. I grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts. I was raised in public housing. I was raised by a single mom. She got sick for a while. I was sent to foster care. And so from a young age, you know, I learned what it meant to be in need. I learned what it meant to be vulnerable. And I learned that when there are government programs there to fill the gap, when there are government programs there to pick you up and support you, you can have a fighting chance in life, right? And that's what everybody deserves. You know, I was not a good student. I was sort of, you know, the class clown. But of course, I'm a giant. So, you know, come the 8th grade, 9th grade, the coaches started paying attention to me. And the next thing you know, I got a full athletic scholarship at Duke University. And, you know, that enabled me to go on to law school to become a leader in my community. But as I look back at the advantages I had, the advantages of being white, the advantages of being male, and then that advantage of getting that athletic scholarship, that free education, I started to realize, wait a minute, you shouldn't have to be a 6'8" white guy to get a great free education. Every single man, woman, and child should get a full education that they deserve.
And how are we going to do that? Well, I'm wearing it on my shirt today.
All right? You know, when Trump and the Republicans took office, they lowered the top corporate tax rate from 36% down to 21%. Giveaway to the richest of the rich. Here in Massachusetts, we've been working on something called the Fair Share Amendment. The Fair Share Amendment would tax incomes over $1 million. It would be a surtax. Activists, many of you in this audience, I'm sure, you did the work to put that on the ballot. And then 3 years ago, those large corporations, I'm talking about the Massachusetts High Technology Council, the Associated Industries of Massachusetts, they went to the SJC courthouse over there and they threw the Fair Share Amendment off the ballot. And so we had to start over from scratch because it's a constitutional amendment. And the very next year, those same corporations, the ones that are fighting Medicare for all, the ones that are fighting free public transit, the ones that are fighting free education, they woke up and they said, we have a transportation emergency. And they said, we have come up with an idea to deal with it. We have this great idea. We'll tax the working class. To that, I think we should say, hell no. So that's a little bit of my perspective, where I'm coming from. And this issue itself is so personal to me. I was an activist. I was an organizer. I still think of myself as an activist in this building. And I can remember when Obamacare was being debated. And I can remember being strongly in support of Medicare for all at that time. However, I recognize, you know, back in 2008, 2009, it seemed like the United States wasn't ready for Medicare for all at that time. The political process was. And there was this idea of the public option. And so at that time, and to be clear, we need Medicare for all now, so I'm not about the public option today. But at that time, I was like, all right, we should get this public option. The Democrats had won the Senate. The Democrats had won the House. Obama had won the White House. Public opinion was 70% of the public wanted the public option. Now you would think, and I know we have some incredible activists who have been out today organizing for better government, you would think that if we won the House, if we won the Senate, if we won the White House, if we had 70% public support, you would think that would mean then we would just do it. Obama would give speeches, and when he said the words public option, it was the biggest applause line of the day. His entire stadiums would be electrified. And yet, somehow, despite all of the stars aligning, it just wasn't, quote unquote, politically possible. And when I saw that, I thought, you know what? I don't have any political experience. No one in my family has any political experience. I don't know anybody in politics. But I'm like, anyone can do this. Like, you know, they're not passing it. We've done everything. We've put them in power. I'm like, maybe I should get involved. So that's what I started organizing in my community. Occupy started. I was here on day one when we were planning Occupy. Occupy was a huge inspiration. Come up a few years. I remember the night that changed my life. This was when I realized I don't have to be shy. I don't have to compromise with myself. We don't have to compromise with each other. It was the day, I believe it was October 5th. Don't hold me to that date, 2015. Some of you were probably there when Bernie Sanders came to the Boston Convention and Expo Center. And I didn't know what to expect when I showed up. You know, I had been out organizing that afternoon. I heard about it. I just showed up. I got there, I saw 20,000 people. You know, this is more than a year before the first vote is supposed to be cast in the election. And when I saw those 20,000 people in that instant, I was like, I believe we can unabashedly, forget about the public option, Medicare for all. We can unabashedly support free college. We can unabashedly support ending the wars. We can unabashedly support housing for all. And so, inspired by Bernie, I ran for state rep in my community. I took on a moderate Democrat. I had the support of Democratic Socialists for America. I had the support of our revolution. I had the support of the Massachusetts campaigns for single payer.
Okay.
I had support from progressive Massachusetts. I know progressive Mass is up today. And working together, we ran a grassroots campaign. We knocked on thousands of doors. We beat an incumbent, and wait for this, he had won 38 elections in a row. So that's one seat. And then 2 years later, Nika Alvarado, running a very similar campaign, she won her election. That's, 2 seats. In Washington, we have AOC, we have Ayanna Pressley, we have Rashida Tlaib, we have Ilhan Omar, we have Cory Bush. But we need hundreds of more activists, organizers, socialists, leftists, Medicare for all officials to win Medicare for all. And so, in closing, I'll start to wrap it up. How am I doing for time? Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you. In closing, I want to talk a bit about the pandemic. When that pandemic struck, why do you think we were able to pass the nation's strongest eviction moratorium? Why are the vaccines free? Why did they put a pause on student loan interest and payments? Why did they put a freeze on, utility shutoffs? My contention is it was because the privileged and the powerful were terrified. They were scared for their own lives. And when that happened, they developed some compassion. They said, gee, we better stop this pandemic. And now, unfortunately, what I see happening is now that the vaccines are out there, and God bless the vaccines, they're so important, they work, most of the privileged and the powerful feel insulated, and now we're being told it's time to get back to normal. But you know, and I know, Rep. Miranda knows, we all know, we're going to hear from some other great elected officials later today. We know that normal wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for people of color. It wasn't good enough for immigrants. It wasn't good enough for poor people. And so we have to look at what we did when that pandemic started. We said COVID testing will be free. That's terrific. But what if you have diabetes? Shouldn't your health care be free? What if you're facing cancer? Shouldn't your health care be free? What if you have a mental health issue? Shouldn't your health care be free? We heard from our incredible city council candidate. Let's give it up for Joel Richards. Joel Richards, Joel. We heard from Joel. What if you have a dental issue? Shouldn't that be free? Who said that dental care wasn't health care? And so we have to take what we've just experienced, this horrible trauma of the pandemic, and we have to keep organizing, we have to keep fighting, and we have to compel those rich and powerful political forces, the top 1%, those who have the power. We have to compel them to meet the moment. Because what we learned in the pandemic is we're only as strong as our most vulnerable. I mean, that's what we're facing now. COVID's coming back, and it's because we haven't had vaccine equity. So I could go on all day about these issues. I'll wrap it up there. I was kind of just trying to talk to you until we had more speakers arrive. And that's because we walk so fast. But I'm so psyched to be here. As long as you keep organizing for Medicare for all, I'm going to keep showing up. As long as you keep organizing, I'll keep showing up. We'll keep fighting for it in this building, and we are going to do it. So vote that out. Let's see what it's like.
All right, give it up for my colleague. Awesome. So I want to remind everyone, there are some people out there thinking that they're safe because they have a job. I want to remind you that if you lose your job today or tomorrow, you lose your health insurance. It's pretty messed up. And that's why your insurance should not be tied to your job. How many people were laid off during COVID? We got people in the crowd. How many people lost their jobs permanently during COVID because the business is closed? So that's something I want you to think about. Never assume that you're safe because you have a job and your employer covers your health insurance, because they can get rid of you anytime. Without further ado, I want to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Liz Miranda, and she is the Massachusetts State Representative for the 5th Suffolk District. What's up, everybody? You ready? How many guys have heard the line that when we fight, we win? How about we chant and start? So when we fight, we win. Yeah, energy. When we fight, we win.
We fight, we win.
It's incredibly important for us to remember that, because sometimes it feels when you're fighting for issues, many of them intersectional, that you seem like you're fighting forever for a million and one things. But I'm here today to say it's such an honor to be with you. I also work with that great gentleman, Rep. Connolly, in this building. I also work with hopefully our next governor, the senator, my senator from Roxbury, Sonia Tangiel. I know Kendra for 6 is on her way. Just wanted to talk to you for a few moments. Now, we know politicians love to talk, so today I wrote some remarks. I wouldn't go off script. For those that don't know me, as Mike said, I represent communities of Roxbury and Dorchester. I've been in office only 31 months, but in those 31 months, I've been able to pass police reform, working on Black maternal health, and environmental justice. And the reason why I work on those things is I grew up in the Dudley Triangle. If you know anything about the Dudley Triangle, and if you don't know, you can learn. There's 2 movies and a book called Streets of Hope about my neighborhood, because it was literally the dumping ground of Boston for decades. So we know what it's like to have poor social determinants of health. People in Roxbury died 33 years ahead of our brothers and sisters in the South End and the Back Bay. Let me say that again. Due to our poor social determinants of health, due to our lack of access of culturally competent care, even though we live walking distance from Boston Medical Center, we died 30 to 33 years ahead of those who live in the South End and Back Bay. Is that a good thing? I don't know y'all, but don't you want to live to 90? I want to know what it's like. And we also have 5 times the asthma rate. And all of that is because for decades and decades, we suffered through redlining, we suffered through pollution, illegal trash transfer stations, and disinvestment from the city of Boston. I also know what it's like to have a sick parent, and a parent who works in the hospitality industry, who has had to work grueling hours just to ensure that she could keep her insurance to keep my dad healthy. And then there were moments when the insurance lapsed, and you just prayed and prayed, no one got sick. I also know what it's like to be unemployed and uninsured and to pay COBRA. And I've had every known insurance plan there is. And to know that you could die because you lack the access or the affordability of culturally competent care is literally killing thousands of people in Boston today. Our community was disproportionately diagnosed, and this is an important fact, disproportionately people died from COVID-19 in places like Roxbury, Dorchester, Revere, Randolph, Brockton, Chelsea, and I could go on and on. And what do we have in common? People of color, lower economic status,
immigrant communities all suffered through COVID-19. But did we already know that already, that would happen? Yeah. We did. We did because we knew where people weren't insured. We knew who didn't have Medicare for all. And we knew where people were suffering, actually choosing between eating, paying their bills, or going to the doctor. 15 million people lost employment, faced health insurance during the pandemic. 15 million people. So now is the time to demand more and to demand better. COVID-19 should not be our wake-up call, or should be our wake-up call. Our current system is not working. Americans die. 26,000 Americans die each year just because they don't have health insurance. Our district was most impacted as a result of economic instability, coupled with pre-existing racial disparities. Newsflash, structural racism does exist. Okay? Let's stop judging that. Stop talking about that critical race theory doesn't exist, okay? And this is not a partisan issue anymore. This is actually an issue of human rights. Why should people be punished for being poor? The system that we have makes sure to hold people down and keep them in their place. One of the largest social determinants of life expectancy due to healthcare is race, and the second is wealth. This proves that our healthcare system, as it is, currently exists, is also racist and classist. Okay? And that's the rest of the debate. Healthcare is also too goddamn expensive. Okay? Currently, today, 30 million Americans remain uninsured, and an additional 41 million adults are underinsured. That's right. Okay, they're underinsured. And two more facts I know it's hot out here, but consider the recent Yale study that found that Medicare would save 68,000 lives per year. Now, in April of last year, I lost my grandmother who raised me to COVID-19. Over 20 members of my family were sick. Now, me being a state rep didn't shield me, didn't shield my family, and didn't shield my community because we were already sick a long time ago. So to know that you could save 68,000 people a year who have loved ones and families is incredibly important. Not only would that cover all of the people dying, not having health insurance, but would also save people who may have inadequate coverage or other complications. We could fix the problem of having so many people under and uninsured by implementing Medicare coverage for all people. And for all the people out there who question government programs on the basis of taxpayer money or government spending, transitioning to a single-payer healthcare system would actually save us $450 billion a year. The average American family could save $2,400 annually. Now, $2,400 to a lot of people may not be a lot of money, but for the people who live in the Fifth Suffolk District and other districts like it, it's the difference between being able to pay your rent, your mortgage, feed your kids, or even have reliable transportation to get to and from work. Okay? So I'm going to add that Medicare for all is a priority for our communities. It's a priority for people like Rep. Connolly, for Senator Sunshine Diaz, and soon to be City Councilor Kendra Hicks. It's a priority for me. And it should be a legislative priority for legislators all over the country to move forward. So let's do this, people. And remember, when we fight, we win. So let's fight together. Thank you. Raise your hand if you ever had to deal with your insurance laughing. Me too. I was in between jobs one time, and I had an allergic reaction. The doctor told me that I had to get an EpiPen. I didn't even know what an EpiPen was. Went to the pharmacy. The pharmacist said, "Do you know how much this costs without health insurance?" And I said, "No, how much?" She said, $500. One dose that can save your life. That's another reason why we need Medicare for all. But without further ado, I want to bring forth our next speaker. She's the Massachusetts State Senator for the 2nd Suffolk District, and she is currently running for governor of Massachusetts. All right, we're going to experiment with the sound. What happens if I stand over here? How you guys doing? We're happy to have sunshine and not rain today, right? All right, you guys heard my name is Sonia Chang-Diaz. I'm very proud to represent the 2nd Suffolk District of Boston. I'm in this place here, but also running for governor, as you heard. And look, you want to make sure that your next governor, whether it's me or someone else, but we're going to make sure it's me. You want to make sure your next governor supports Medicare for all. And listen, if you remember only one thing that I say to you today, let it be this: $1,800. Say it with me, $1,800. All right, we'll come back to that in a minute. Just want to make sure you're listening. So $1,800. Every person in the Commonwealth deserves access to high quality health care. And that needs to be high quality health care that doesn't come at the expense of mountains of paperwork or crushing medical debt or having to maintain and being able to afford rent or groceries like my girl Ms. Miranda just talked about. Or it should not have to come at the expense of staying at a job that is dangerous or exploitive. The healthcare system that we have right now is broken and expensive. And I know I don't need to tell you guys this, but we're here to tell everybody else out here today this, right? It is broken and expensive. In 2017, people with costs made up 1/3 of what we are all spending on healthcare. 1/3, y'all. Experts estimate, and you heard the number 450 billion from Lynn. I saw another estimate that said 600 billion. Whether it's 450 billion or 600 billion, it's too much. Those numbers haven't been on anyway. So if you take that number, we're going to use my 600 billion, so that's what I did the math I did in advance, right? If you take that number, $600 billion, and you divide it by every man, woman, and child in the United States of America, you know what you get? You got it. $1,800 per year per person. I don't know about you, but I could use another $1,800. Somebody shout out what you would like to spend those $1,800 on per year. What could you use that money for? Go ahead and shout it out. I heard college. I heard rent. If you need to say something out loud, turn to your left, turn to your right, turn to your neighbor and tell them what you would like to spend that $1,800 per year on, other than paperwork and bureaucracy in your home care. And that's just the money cost. We heard from Lynn. I caught the end of his legs remarks. You probably heard from him about the human cost, not just the financial cost, but they are both real. And the cost of time and stress that we put into navigating this crazy bureaucracy does not lead to better health outcomes. It does not. They don't keep us, our families, our loved ones, or our communities healthier. We see this when we look at our peer countries, when we look at Canada, we look at the UK. We are not any healthier than our brothers and sisters in these other countries that have Medicare for all or single payer. We also saw clearly last year, the failings of our system as we went through the threat of a global health pandemic. All over our state, thousands of workers lost their jobs in mass layoffs. And especially, of course, our low-income workers who were already more vulnerable, had less of a safety net in the first place. And they were subject to these massive layoffs. And that meant that for many, they were losing their healthcare coverage for themselves and their families at exactly the worst time. This is not the healthcare system we need. This is not the healthcare system that we should aspire to in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's a time during pandemic when we need to make sure that healthcare is a privilege. It is not a privilege. Say it with me. You guys know who's checking out. You're listening, right? Should it be a privilege? Should it be a privilege? No. No. It should not be a privilege that depends on how well the economy is doing, but it should be, as the sign says, I saw you, it should be a human right. And now we are also seeing the repercussions of this loss of healthcare coverage are still with us. Even as we've declared an end to the state of emergency, we are not through this pandemic. And we see that these lasting repercussions are rippling through our communities and our economy. Right now, those without healthcare coverage are less likely to be vaccinated, less likely to have the protection that vaccines will provide for themselves, but all of us, everyone around that person who does not have a vaccine, we are all bearing the risk. If you have not got a vaccine yet, please do so. I think I'm preaching to the choir here. If they don't know where to go, if they don't know where to get information to make them feel confident about getting that vaccine, please take them by the hand, put your mask on, ask them to put their mask on, take them by the hand to get them some information to get that vaccine. Medicare for All answers so many of the problems that we are struggling with, so many of the concerns, the financial costs, the human costs, the cost to our communities and our economies, billions of dollars that go to paperwork, the stress that is piled on families, and most of all, the danger of losing your health insurance just when you need it the most. All of those fears, let me tell you, they weigh heavily on our families and our loved ones. They weigh heavily on the people of Massachusetts. I'm in conversations across our state now about the issues that are most on people's minds. And these are issues on people's minds across Massachusetts. And you know what? In Massachusetts, we can do better than this. We know in Massachusetts, nobody wants to be wasting $1,800 a year. Nobody wants to go without access to health care. Nobody wants to have to worry about whether their neighbor has health care when they need it the most. Massachusetts voters are smart. They are moral people, and they don't like wasting money. So we can do this. All institutions coming together, and we can do this. I want to give a shout out to the people who have been in the trenches on this issue for so long, right there beside you. Especially the filers, my brothers and sisters here in the legislature who have been filing Medicare for all. You get on for Medicare for all, that's right. My brother Jamie Aldridge in the Senate, Lindsay Sabadosa, Denise Garlick in the House who've been filing this legislation. And you know who else? There are 69 co-sponsors of Medicare for all legislation in the House and the Senate. Of the legislature are co-sponsors. That is political will. That is political popularity that you guys have built hard by your organizing over the years. We have over a third of the legislature, not just that they're willing to vote for it, but who have put their John Hancock right on the bill as co-sponsors. That is political capital that we can build on. You gotta keep organizing. You gotta keep showing up here, and you gotta keep showing up in the State House, whether it's digitally or in person once we reopen this fall, to testify in hearings and let your elected officials know where you stand. Because let me tell you, we can get this done. And let me tell you how I know. I know that bold, progressive, audacious changes and ideas are possible in our state. I know because I've seen them get done. They told us that equal rights for transgender base-aiders was unrealistic. They told us that the Student Opportunity Act was unrealistic. They told us, right? They told us that real, meaningful criminal justice reform in 2015, 2016, 2017 was unrealistic, but in 2018, we passed it into law. We kept the faith, we kept organizing, and we made them the law. We can do it with Medicare for all.
Thank you, Sabby. We got a weird story with healthcare. I was living in Florida a couple of years ago, and one night my hand started hurting like crazy so much that I couldn't sleep. I had no idea what it was because I have a very high pain tolerance, so I knew it wasn't just me sleeping on it funny. I could not sleep. I had to wait until the morning to go to urgent care. I had them do an x-ray of my hand, and the doctor at urgent care told me I was growing an extra finger. So that was weird. I was recommended to go to a hand specialist because my family was living here in Massachusetts. There was not a single hospital, there was not a single doctor that would take care of me in Florida because my health care, even though I had it with my family, only existed in Massachusetts. So I had to move to Massachusetts to visit a hand specialist. So after all the costs of flying and relocating, that doctor told me that they had no idea what the doctor in Florida was saying, and that I was not growing an extra finger, and that if my hand continues to hurt, I should come back in. So that's my real story. Healthcare is a human right. I'm going to give it back to Sab.
Does it sound a little better if I stand behind the speaker? Yes. Okay. Someone told me to stand behind the speaker. All right. So our next speaker is a community organizer. His name is Joseph Irizarry Sr.
Hello. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out here today. I came out here to support the agenda, but also talk about my own. So I'm a person with lived experience, and one of my jobs is to organize the community behind the bill that's going to come October that Liz Miranda and Jay Livingston has signed on to. And part of the bill is to get life without parole. There's a lot of men and women that are incarcerated right now that are going to be spending the rest of their life in prison. This is basically a death sentence. You know what I mean? They are there and they're working for lower than minimum wage. It's slave labor. If you're familiar with the 13th Amendment, you know if you commit a felony that you are a slave. There are men and women on the community today that are released on probation and parole, but they are really a slave while they're on probation and parole because their parole officer can come and tell them they need to quit a job and look for another one. And they have to do that. They need to lose their apartment and move to another one. They have to do that because their PO has that authority, and because they committed a felony, they are a slave. So therefore, they have to abide by what their PO has told them. And if they don't, they go back to prison to complete the remainder of their sentence. So this is some of the things that I'm trying to bring to light to everybody. I think it's important that we all stand behind this agenda because so many men and women also committed a crime when they was either 18, 19 years old. And if you know how you thought when you was 18 or 19 years old, your faculties wasn't all there. You know what I'm saying? Let me share a story with you real quick. I don't want to take too much of your time. So the first time I've ever committed a crime, I was 13 years old. The crime I committed was based on the dead. I'm pretty sure everybody out here as a kid was there to do something by one of their friends. And if you did not do that, you was ridiculed, you was embarrassed, all those things transpired. I did this and I thought that I was not going to be taken serious by a grown man, and I'm a 13-year-old little boy, and I just told him to give me his money. I was in Phil's Corner, the old Phil's Corner. They had a little tunnel under it. Y'all know Boston, y'all know it. He gave me his money. But now, what he didn't understand, what I truly didn't understand, I grew up in poverty. I grew up in trauma, cycles of trauma. I grew up in cycles of violence. I grew up in foster care. I was a state ward of Massachusetts. So therefore, my legal parents was the state of Massachusetts. I committed this crime after all that abuse. That man didn't know that he gave me power at that moment to a child that has been harmed so many times. So what happens when hurt people actually, what happens to hurt people? They start to hurt other people. They don't know how to deal with that pain. So I'm here today to talk about that cycle and how that leads to men and women continuing to commit acts of violence, and then they end up in prison for the rest of their life. So I'm here today just to make myself known to the community that this is what I'm representing. I'm hoping a lot of you folks, fine folks, to come out and join. The bill is going to be posted here for a hearing come October. Reach out to your representatives, Liz Miranda, Jay Livingston, Sonia Chang. Reach out to them and talk to them and tell them that you want to support this agenda. We've been fighting for it for too long. Thank you for your time. I'll give you my calls for those that are very interested so that you can come and check out the bill. It's on the website as well. You know what I mean? But thank you for your time.
All right, cool. I just want to check and see if some of the other speakers are already here, and I just make sure I didn't miss you. Ricardo Aurora. Second. Kendra Hicks. Nathaniel McCarthy. Nathaniel McKinney. Nope. Carlos Cardona. Okay, so.
Okay, so we may have more speakers arriving in a bit if you want us to check around for that. If that's all the speakers that are here. So I want to say thank you again for coming. And let's say it one more time so everyone can hear us in the park. Healthcare is a human right.
This is why we have to fight.
Healthcare is a human right.
This is why we have to fight.
Healthcare is a human right.
This is why we have to fight.
What do we want?
Medicare for all.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Medicare for all.
When do we want it?
Now.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming.
I'm gonna get
So Nathaniel Mulcahy may be here in about 5 to 10 minutes if anyone wants to wait for that.
Yeah.
applicația. Dar nicio reprezentă aplicația.
Can I mention that? I'm not agreeing with that. That's not something.
You have to.
You don't know anymore.
We could have moved some telling on Twitter. I just sent you a DM with a couple pictures of you. So don't be like, yeah, no pictures, I'm not even looking.
Oh, thank you.
I sent pictures of this.
Also,
It's a little,
thanks.
PhD picture going on.
Oh, wow.
When you see it in there, that's what it is.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
It's up. Come on.
Then,
My van is literally running up the hill right now. Do you want to like try to reconvene and everybody standing around and have a conversation? Sure. Testing garage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can video it.
Great.
I'm inserting myself. I'm Sabrina. I'm going to introduce you.
Great.
You were just elected, correct?
No, it's not. I ran behind it.
Oh no, sorry. So explain the elected part.
Right now, I'm just elected with the state office. This morning.
And he was out Medicare for all. So
I ran for Congress last year. The only member in my district that ran a Medicare for all, and the only one the Democratic Party disenrolled during my campaign.
okay. All right.
All right. That's all you got.
Hello, hello. Okay, cool. All right, guys, we do have another speaker that has arrived. He's an inventor, and he was just selected to as state delegate. His name is Nathaniel Mulcahy.
I'm going to take my mask off for this brief moment of talking. But I want to thank you for being here. Because this is important. This is a hugely important issue. It's an issue that the majority of voters in the state of Massachusetts want, but the majority of people there do not want. If you start to think about it, the Trumpists wanted to make America great again. But the reality is, America has never been great. So how can it be great again? 96 Hughes said it far more poetically than I ever could. He said, the dream of America that has never come true. Immigrants, in a certain sense, are far more American than any of us here. Because unlike us, they still believe that all are created equal. And if they come to this country, they will all be created equal. But they're not. In this country, there are people that cannot stand to come here and die. It's the thing, when cancer for the rich means they have an illness and get better. For the mid-range economic people, that dwindling middle class, for them it means permanent economic ruin. And for the poor, cancer in this country means death. How is that all are created equal when three different classes of people have three different outcomes for the same illness? Medicare for all makes us all equal in the eyes of government. On a personal basis, am I standing here today? Am I in a wheelchair? 14 years ago, I broke my neck and was paralyzed. I spent 18 months in intensive care and 2.5 years in rehab. It cost me the equivalent of $35 to walk again. Because I broke my neck in Italy, which has Medicare for all. When I broke my neck, we wrote to the Christopher Reeve Institute in this country, which is supposed to be the world's best spinal cord injury institute in the world. And you know what they replied? Can anyone guess? No, they didn't even ask for my insurance. They knew insurance would reject any expense of the policy. So they said, we're terribly sorry about your accident. Here's the name of a really good wheelchair company. We'll try to get you a discount. Is that freedom for all? I walked here. I ran here this morning. Physically ran here. But 14 years ago, I couldn't even move my leg. If we had Medicare for all in this country, other people like me would be walking. Instead, there are thousands who are paralyzed. I'm the proud papa of 2 4-year-olds. 4 years ago, they were born 2 months premature. They spent 2 months in NICU down here. Anyone know what NICU costs? Anyone can guess what it costs per day? $3,500 per child per day. Our 2 children were there. That's $7,000 a day for 2 months. Because I am lucky enough to have health insurance, our children were allowed to stay there and come home when they were healthy. But we saw people without insurance who did not have that option. So again, the class division here means deaf or poor children. It means disproportionately deaf for children of color. I wore this shirt today on purpose because my beautiful wife is black. And when she was bleeding to death on the table and going into shock because of complications from childbirth, and we begged them for some painkillers, we were told, and I quote, "Oh, people of her race don't feel pain the same way. She's just imagining it." Medicare for all is not only an issue of life and death, it is a matter of equality. It is a racial matter. And we need this in this country more than ever now because this past 4 years has shown a racial divide that was always here but hidden. And now it's out in the open and we need to address it even more. Last month, we drove to Florida to see my in-laws. On our way there, we drove through Washington, D.C. And my 4-year-old son looked out the window and marveled because he saw these beautiful concrete and steel streets going into the sky, which is the 9/11 memorial. What does that have to do with Medicare for all? I'll tell you. During 9/11, which is a national tragedy, many people died. But each year in this country, because of lack of health care, 10 times as many people die. Medicare for all addresses the tragedy 10 times worse than 9/11, which has been swept under the carpet. There is no memorial for 30,000 dead a year. There is none. Because the corporations don't want a memorial, because it would point out how they are responsible for 10 times the number of deaths of the 9/11 attacks. Corporations are exerting a terroristic attack on our nation by denying us health. Yes. So going back to what I was going to do, will Medicare for all make the American dream come true? No. But without it, it won't ever become ever more than a dream. And with it, it has a chance to become more than a dream. It has a chance to become something concrete for the first time ever. And that's why I'm here today fighting for Medicare for all of us. Thank you.
Let's give a huge thank you to Daniel. All right, guys, we're closing out, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out today. I know it's a little toasty, but it's better than rain again. So thanks so much, guys. And when you go home, like, please take this message to your friends and family members as well. Please don't let it stop and end here. Please pick up the phone and call your congressmen and women, call the people in the state house, and demand that we get health care for everybody in this country.
If you have pictures and videos of this event, which I know many of you do, please do the same thing. When you're posting on social media, try to use hashtags like Why We March or M for All, which is March for Medicare for All, and then tag your public officials for your congressional seat, for your governor, your state senator. Every single person needs to feel the pressure now. They need to know what happened here today. I think they do. We're going to make it very clear call your representative, email your representative, send them photos and videos of the march. I think that'll be very powerful. Thank you, everyone.
Oh shoot, I'm gonna have to take it out to take it off. I can't see it because this